Okay then, so now we've created the HTML template for this project, the next logical step is to start interacting with the AccuWeather API so we can go ahead, get some data and then eventually show it on this page. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is head over to the AccuWeather API homepage. That is at developer.accuweather.com. This link is going to be attached to this lecture. So this right here is the API homepage and we can see some information about recently added APIs and tweets, etc. But the first thing you're going to need to do is register for a free account right here. So click on register, fill in all the details and then click on create new account at the bottom. I've already done that, so I'm going to log in now and then you'll be directed to the homepage again. So what we need to do when we use an API, generally, no matter what API that is, it generally wants us to create some kind of app for our usage. So this is the same whether we use the AccuWeather API or the Twitter API or the Instagram API. Most of them want us to create some kind of app which is going to use this API. So to do that with AccuWeather, let's go to My Apps and then we're going to add a new app right here. Now when we do this, all it's going to do is ask you a few questions about the application. So we'll call this Ninja Weather Limited Trial. This is going to be a desktop website and it's going to be a weather app. The language is going to be JavaScript and business to consumer, doesn't really matter. And we're going to make this worldwide, then we create the application. So the idea behind this of creating an app is so that we can get an API key from the API service. So we'll create this app and that gives us this API key. So when we make requests to an API, typically that API is going to give us some kind of API key so that when we make the request, we send this with the request, and when it reaches their servers, they know who made the request and which application is making it. That's the whole idea behind this creating an application on their website. It's just an identification purpose. So then, we need this thing right here to make requests later. If we don't have this, when we try to access the data, it's going to deny us. So we need to copy this. So what I'm going to do is copy that, come over to the text editor and go to the forecast.js. And inside here, I'm going to create a constant called key and set it equal to a string. And inside the string, we're going to paste in this API key. So we have that stored now for when we need to use it later. Now then, just one quick thing, we have a free account right here with AccuWeather. Now what that means is we can only create one app at a time, like we've just created right here, and that app can only have 50 requests per day, meaning we can make 50 requests to this API to get data per day using this API key. If we try to make more, it's not going to let us. So that's a limit of a free account. But fear not, if you find yourself when you're developing that you've used this 50 times in a day to make a request and you can't make any more, all you need to do is delete the app, then go to add new app to create an app again. You'll get a different key, change the key in your code, and then you'll be able to make another 50 requests with that key. This process might happen to me during this project, so if it does, you'll see how I do it. It might not, we'll see. Anyway, now we have our API key. Now, when we're requesting data from the endpoints to this API, we're going to have to do two different things. First of all, we need to make a request to a certain endpoint to get city information. And in that city information is going to be a city code. So once we have that, we're going to use that city code to make a second request to a weather conditions API endpoint. We're going to send that city code to it so it can identify where we want to get the weather, and it will send us the weather conditions back for that area. So we're going to do two requests to two different endpoints. Now, how do we know what those endpoints are? Well, typically, when we have some kind of API service for developers, they give you an API reference, and AccuWeather is no different. So let's click on that, and we can see we have all of these different API services that we can use. Now, like I said, we need to find the city information first, which is in the locations API. So click on that. And we're going to use this right here, this endpoint, to get the city information. Now, with that information that we get from here comes a city code. Then we're going to use that code and we're going to access a second endpoint from current conditions, and it's this one right here. And see this location key right here? This is the city code that we need. So we need to send that city code to this endpoint to get weather conditions from that area. Then we can show those on the page in our browser. So the first step in the next video is to use the locations API down here to get city information. So we'll do that in the next lecture.